a very good morning to all the participants connected with us in the studio also. So we are going to start with our very first session, that is on cooperative and collaborative learning techniques. So when it comes to design the instruction, the very important part of any organized experience is that what teaching method is being selected by the faculty. So as per the literature, there are approximately 101 teaching methods available with us. But as we are in the habit of using lecture method again and again for our student, it is not that with the help of traditional lecture method, it is not possible for me to develop curiosity or engage my students in the process of learning. But yes, when it comes to the involvement of the student, rather than using traditional lecture method approach, we need to give flexibility to our student. We need to provide opportunities to our student. They can put 100% effort to understand that information. In traditional lecture method, what happened 100% of the time, the teacher is in the class developing verbal explanation for the student, and it is up to the level of the student that uh, whether they are able to understand it or not. And if the teacher is asking few questions to the students also, there may be one or two, or maybe there are four or five students in the class, those are able to give reply to the student. Because in traditional lecture method, most of the time we are using those lecture for the exposure of new information. लेक्चर मेथड में हम यही करते हैं ना, देर इज अ टॉपिक इज डिलीवर्ड बाय द फैकल्टी, so we are exposing the student with new information again and again. And suppose in a day, if there are 6 lectures for the students planned other than the laboratory classes, it means every teacher is exposing the student to the new information, and every teacher has a different kind of style to develop that verbal explanation. So maybe with few of the faculty members the teacher feel connected, and with few of the faculty member the teacher doesn't feel connected, and they are not able to understand the content matter fully. So it's a human behavior. I am not connected with every member sitting in this room, or I'm not connected with every departmental faculty as a colleague. So when there is a connection between the student and the teacher, possibilities that student felt more engaged in that particular environment. But what happened if we provide this ability, this flexibility to the student, that this is the information, I am here to explain that information to all of you. You need to process that information in my presence, and when you are processing that information, if there is any doubt, if there is any clarification that is required, I will provide you the essential feedback. So that is student led teaching approaches. So rather than teacher is delivering the whole information to the students, the teacher is creating an environment facilitating the process of learning, where student will take part in different activities and becoming the part of that information. So that is why in education, new education policy 2020, there is a demand that rather than directive teaching, the faculty member need to shift their classroom to student led teaching environment, where student will perform certain activities in the presence of the faculty, and faculty will able to analyze that whether students are able to understand that information or not. So I may have higher degrees, I may have advanced information available for my subject, but if in my class my students are not able to understand that information fully, somewhere I need to understand the level of my student, and I need to break down that information in the most simplest form so that my students are able to understand. I may need to use a regional language, I may need to use other languages also, but my major objective is that I am able to develop basic understanding of that subject information among my student. Kaise hoga? When the teacher involve the students in the process of learning. So that is why when it comes to the teaching methodologies, they are divided into 3 different categories: individual teaching learning strategies, cooperative teaching learning strategies, and collaborative teaching learning strategies. So with this note, we are going to start our session today. In this particular session, I will explain one or two of the teaching strategies also, and one video I will display, that is the demonstration method of teaching. So my request to all the participants connected with us offline as well as online, Kindly see the picture available with all of you on screen and try to interpret the meaning of this image. Do not read the slide, try to interpret the meaning of this particular image. So learning and teaching is a two-way process. Learning is the reflection of teaching, and when we are teaching to our student, at the same time we are also learning. So when it comes to the teaching and learning, it means that whatever the teacher is teaching in a class, the equivalent amount of learning need to be happened. I'm not saying 100%, equivalent amount of learning need to be happened in a classroom environment, and it is totally dependent upon what kind of environment the teacher is creating. So we are saying what kind of environment, in the last lecture yesterday, there was a discussion about the kind of experiences the teacher is going to create when it comes to the students who are not matured enough. So when I'm using the term not matured enough, means the student who are very new to the technical education system, maybe the student in the first semester or in a second semester or the third semester student who are very new to that kind of information. It means the level of the student is not up to the mark. We need somewhat basic preparation at the part of the student to understand that subject matter. So we need extra effort, we need extra time for those particular student. And sometimes after identifying the level of the student, the teacher also analyze the curriculum, that up to what extent it is possible for me to develop or gradually improve the performance of the student. अगर किसी student का level D है, the student is not able to get 40% of the marks, practically it is not possible for the teacher to shift that grade from D to A within a semester. आप D वाले को A grade पे नहीं ला सकते within a semester, right or wrong? Practically it is not possible, because we need to gradually improve upon about the performance of the student. So when we are saying that teaching must results into equivalent amount of learning, it will happen when the teacher is able to identify the level of the students available in the class, and as per the students available with you, when you are able to design instructions in such a manner that every student whosoever available with you in your class, you are giving experiences to them in your day to day teaching. In an academic calendar there are 90 days in a semester, so teacher need to add diversity to teaching. ये नहीं है कि मैं सिर्फ लेस देन 40% वालों पे फोकस कर रही हूँ थ्रू आउट द सेमेस्टर. आई नीड टू क्रिएट वराइटी ऑफ एक्सपीरियंसेस सो दैट इट इज पॉसिबल फॉर मी टू कैटर द नीड्स ऑफ माई स्टूडेंट विद इन दैट semester. So I will ask open-ended questions also. I will focus on multiple choice questions also. I will focus on seminar and presentations also. I will focus on written assignments also. I will focus on their practical skills also, so that it is possible for me to capture the needs of the student whosoever available with me in my class. Yes, yesterday in the inaugural session, sir said for intelligent student we need not to focus more because they are already know about the content. I totally contradict with that particular statement. If the student is intelligence is or her IQ EQ level is very high, it doesn't mean that teacher is going to ignore that student because he or she is able to pass that subject. My objective as a teacher is to develop critical thinking skill among my student, so that with that IQ ability or with that EQ ability, that student is able to increase level higher than the previous learning. So the student is having past experiences, that is up to the mark, but now it is a responsibility of the teacher that how we are going to develop the creativity of that particular student. So when it comes to teaching and learning, the student teacher need to know the level of the student, and as per the level of the student we need to add variety to our teaching. So every day I'm not going to use lecture method again and again with my student. If I'm interacting with the students, if I'm creating humor in my class, if I'm storytelling or narrating something to my student, it is not my day to day routine. Maybe student in your class like me, I'm not interested in storytelling, I'm not interested in all the other humors that is created by the teacher in a class. I'm interested that what information in advanced form the teacher is going to provide to me, because that the learning style of every individual is different. So teacher need to add variety in a learning environment. So when we are lecturing to our student, it is just a verbal explanation that we are developing if we are using a traditional method in our classroom environment. But the thing is, in a lecture method, we consider that all the students are homogeneous by nature. So when we are saying homogeneous by nature, means as a teacher, when I'm delivering this particular topic to all of you, I'm assuming that every individual whosoever available with me offline, online, they are interested in this kind of verbal explanation. So that may not be true. There may be few of the students or few of the faculty members in my class who demand that you provided us a YouTube recorded lecture to us whenever time available with me, or whenever flexibility is available with me. I will go through that information and I will call for more advanced information related to that particular topic. Right now from 10 to 11:15, I'm not in the mood of listening about that information. But in lecture method, this particular flexibility is not available with us. As a teacher, as a student, we need to be available at the same time, and we need to focus upon the information that is delivered by the teacher. So in my class, there may be kinesthetic learner who want me to demonstrate something to understand this particular topic. In my class, there may be verbal learner who is very happy when I'm delivering information with the help of PowerPoint presentation. There may be another student who is a global learner who want number of information occurring simultaneously at a time, and that student is able to capture information from multiple resources. But in lecture method, when I'm using this method again and again, I'm assuming that every student in my class is very happy when it comes to the verbal explanation of the material. As the lecture continues, the retention of the material start declining. Research said in the initial 10 minutes, the retention of material, if the student is very much focused in a class, in that case also, the retention of material in the first 10 minutes is approximately 70%, and in the last 10 minutes of the lecture, the retention of the material is only up to 20%. If we assume the lecture is of 50 minutes. And most of the students are physically available with you in a class, but they are mentally not available with the teacher. But why we need lecture method? We are not saying that we need to remove this method from teaching learning strategies. We need lecture method to develop basic understanding of that particular subject. जैसे हम इंजीनियरिंग ड्राइंग की बात करें, हमारे बीटेक में सब्जेक्ट है, डिप्लोमा में इट्स अ कंपल्सरी सब्जेक्ट इंजीनियरिंग ड्राइंग. देयर आर सर्टन सिंबल्स, देयर आर सर्टन एब्रीवेशंस दैट वी नीड टू नो. इलेक्ट्रॉनिक के स्टूडेंट की टेक्निकल वोकेबलरी डिफरेंट है एज कम्पेयर टू द स्टूडेंट ऑफ केमिकल इंजीनियरिंग और टेक्सटाइल इंजीनियरिंग ब्रांच. For mechanical engineering student, it is possible for him to or her to understand the abbreviations we are using in chemical and textile engineering, because they are interlinked branches. So every branch has a different kind of technical language or technical vocabulary. So lecture method help us to develop this basic understanding among student. आपके सब्जेक्ट के प्रिंसिपल्स हैं, थियोरीज हैं, फैक्ट्स हैं, फाइंडिंग्स हैं, दैट द टीचर इज एबल टू कन्वे amount of information with the help of lecture method. We are not removing this particular strategy from teaching learning, but it need to be with added experiences. So I'm not developing verbal explanation for 50 long minutes. I will give time to my students to process that information. Student information को process कैसे करेगा? Whenever we ask questions in a class, it may be in the introductory phase of the lecture, it may be in the developmental phase of the lecture, or it may be at the end of the lecture when the teacher is asking questions to the student, and there are one or two students in a class who are ready with the responses. The teacher come to know that this much percentage of students are able to understand that information fully. If many of the students are not able to give response to the simple questions asked by the teacher, why I'm saying simple question, because whenever we expose to a new information, we need a processing time. Some of the student may require more process time as compared to other. So I'm not asking the very complex kind of statements to my student within the lecture. I will ask few simple statements related to the topic developed, And based on that information, I'm going to analyze that in my next class, what will be my course of action. Do I need to revise the previous information? Do I need to give additional notes or information to my student, or I simply need to move on to the next topic? I'm giving complex questions at the end of the class, not in between the class. If in between the class we are asking few difficult questions to our student, and if the students are not able to respond to those questions, many of the students felt disengaged. जब हम कहते हैं ना motivation in a class, motivation that we are not preaching to our student, the kind of practices that is followed by the teacher help us to motivate our student to be with us in the process of लर्निंग. अगर आप क्लास में 10 बारी कहोगे कि मैंने इतना पढ़ा लिया, आपको फिर भी समझ नहीं आया, you are not ready to listen to me. There are 70% of the students who are witty by nature. वो कहेंगे ठीक है अब तुम पढ़ा लो, फिर हम नहीं समझ रहे. यही होता है एक्चुअल में. So the kind of vocabulary, the kind of communication that is happening in your classroom environment help you to engage or motivate your students in the process of learning. So when we ask questions to our student, the student take time. We give pauses to our student to capture the amount of information they already listened. So when they are processing information, they are analyzing information and then developing responses in their own language and giving those responses to the teacher. And this will define the next course of action for the teacher. So when it comes to the teaching, it is being said that teaching is the most difficult profession. You need to take instant decision when you are available with the students in a class. So when it comes to an instant decision, maybe you prepared a PowerPoint presentation, but your class student said that we are not ready to learn from the PowerPoint presentation. We need a different method. I want you to explain the numerical derivation on the board rather than copy pasting it on the PowerPoint presentation. Say the light is not working, technology is not working. What is an another way to deal with that particular information? So constantly we are making decision in a classroom environment, and those decisions help us to develop the level of understanding among our student. It is not that you have developed the content, delivered a content, and 100% efficiency you are going to develop within that particular class. You need to give extra time to your student to process that amount of information and give few of the tasks related to that particular content. Only then the students are able to understand that content fully. So in a classroom environment, there must be interaction with the student happening all the time with the teacher. So from the literature of teaching education, these are the 7 principles of effective teaching. The very first principle is encourage student instructor contact, encourage cooperation among students, encourage active learning, give prompt feedback, emphasize time on task, communicate high expectations, and respect diverse talents or different ways of learning. So, my request to kindly go through these principles and try to identify what is the most major parameter that we need to consider in a classroom environment. The most common factor that we all need to consider is to create communication in a classroom environment. So when we said encourage student instructor contact, it will happen only if communication is happening all the time in your class. Corporation, student will work in team, student will work in group. So within team, within group, there are more chances that they are interacting with each other. Active learning, it can be discussions, it can be other student led approaches. Feedback कैसे दोगे? It can be either in a verbal mode or in a written mode. Again, communication plays an important role. The teacher will direct the student, make announcements with the help of communication only. So emphasize time on task. When the teacher is giving these kind of directions to the student become more active and more engaging. Communicate your high expectations and respect diverse talents and different ways of learning. If your classroom is a two-way channel of communication, in that particular case, the chances are the student will understand the content more as compared to when the teacher is dealing with the students in a class. So if there is interaction in a class happening all the time, the chances are the student will process more amount of information. प्रोसेसिंग हैपनिंग कब होगी? when the teacher is going to add pauses in a classroom environment. So you need to plan a lesson in such a way. As a teacher, you need to decide after every 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to interact with my student. Maybe I'm going to call few of the student in front of the board to ask few of the statements. Maybe I give time to my student to solve a problem within group or within team. So there are many teaching strategies available with us that help us to create such kind of learning environment. आपने peer evaluation, peer learning के concept सुन रखे हैं? What is peer evaluation? What is peer learning? Flipped classroom, blended learning, all these teaching strategies help us to create interaction in a classroom environment. So, when it comes to motivating or engaging your students in a classroom environment, always use a positive vocabulary. Instead of saying that you are not able to achieve this much of marks, the teacher can simply pass a remarks that you are gradually improving. You need to focus more upon that information. आप किसी को फेल कह रहे हो क्लास में, or you are saying that you are not able to complete this particular activity, rather than giving this particular statement, we are saying that you are gradually improving day by day. So that the positive kind of vocabulary help us to develop rapport, good interpersonal relationship with our student, and student felt more engaged in that particular kind of environment. So communication need to be happened in the classroom, and when the learning is active, the student will perform most of the work. Otherwise, if the teacher is developing information, the student is available in the class just for the sake of attendance. But if the teacher is asking few questions or interacting with the student throughout the class, the students are ready with the responses. Maybe not all, few, but they are with you in the classroom environment. So that is why in new education policy, there is a demand of student leading teaching approaches rather than teacher directive methodologies. So an instructional method that engage students in the process of learning and active learning environment make the students more active rather than passive participants in the process of learning. So you all are from engineering background. All the teachers available with us are from engineering background. How many days required by us for the preparation of one subject and then appearing for an examination? कितने दिन में हम एक पेपर को रेडी कर लेते थे? हम सबको एग्जाम से पहले छुट्टियां होती है ना, 15 और 20 प्रेपरेटरी डेज, एंड देयर आर 5 to 6 सब्जेक्ट. सो वी ऑल डिसाइड के 5 दिन इस सब्जेक्ट को, 5 दिन इस सब्जेक्ट को, 5 दिन इस सब्जेक्ट को. ये तो मुझे पढ़ना ही नहीं है, सिर्फ पासिंग मार्क्स लेने हैं, तो इसको सिर्फ 2 ही दिन में जो पिछले क्वेश्चन पेपर है वो करने हैं. दैट वाज आवर अप्रोच व्हेन वी वर स्टडिंग. हम प्रैक्टिकल बातें करते हैं, तो प्रैक्टिकली हम सब ऐसे ही अपने कंटेंट को प्रिपेयर करते थे. देयर आर फ्यू स्टूडेंट्स हु प्रिपेयर्ड नोट्स थ्रू आउट द सेमेस्टर, and at the end of the semester there are few students who borrow those notes and able to get higher score as compared to that particular candidate. उनकी टीचिंग अप्रोच थी कि दे नीड अ स्ट्रक्चर्ड काइंड ऑफ मटेरियल एंड दे पुट मैक्सिमम एफर्ट फॉर द प्रिपरेशन ऑफ द कंटेंट. But there is a student in a class whose high IQ ability is there, EQ ability is there. That student is able to capture that information within a minimum time and able to get good score. I'm not talking about the practical information available with the student. I'm just talking about the theoretical preparation of that information. तो स्टूडेंट के लिए इन एनी इंजीनियरिंग इंस्टीट्यूशन द मोटिवेशन ऑफ द स्टूडेंट इज टू गेट गुड मार्क्स और गुड ग्रेड. स्टूडेंट लेवल पे स्टूडेंट पॉपुलेशन का बेसिक मोटिवेशन क्या होता है? आई नीड टू गेव हाईएस्ट परसेंटेज फ्रॉम द इंटरनल असेसमेंट फ्रॉम द टीचर. दैट इज वाई दे आर ऑल अराउंड द टीचर इन द लास्ट ऑफ द सेमेस्टर कि टीचर मुझे अच्छा ग्रेड दे दे. एंड इन अ सब्जेक्ट अगर मैं इतने यूनिट्स कर लूंगा 80% और 90% ऑफ द मार्क्स आई एम एबल टू अचीव बिकॉज फ्रॉम द लास्ट 5 years these are the similar kind of question happening in the question paper. But what active learning is saying, involve the students in different activity rather than just focusing on the theoretical concept. It is the responsibility of the student and it is their willingness also to get good score in exam. अगर आप नहीं भी पढ़ाओगे ना, किसी सब्जेक्ट के टीचर नहीं भी है, After that also students are able to cover that subject as far as theoretical and laboratory environment is concerned. The role of the teacher is to develop the understanding of that particular subject. So understanding कब होगी? Not with the theoretical information that we are developing in a classroom environment. That information is available in abundance nowadays. मैम ने उस दिन चैट जीपीटी की बात करी थी. On chat gpt, when you put an keyword or you write a question, within 2 minutes that chat gpt is able to give you essay of 800 words by using all the authentic sources of information. आपको साइंस डायरेक्ट पे जाने की या आपको डिफरेंट जर्नल्स को आइडेंटिफाई करने की जरूरत नहीं है. चैट जीपीटी विल प्रोवाइड यू द होल इंफॉर्मेशन विद इन 2 seconds. And there is a debate that is happening in different academic platforms that chat gpt is killing student essays. आप कॉपीराइट की या आप प्लेगरिज्म की क्या बात करोगे? चैट जीपीटी इज देयर टू हेल्प द स्टूडेंट इन ऑल ways. Yes, you not need to think at all. Student can capture lot amount of information with the help of that platform. So the basic purpose nowadays, when the information is available in abundance, the teacher need to create an environment where the student perform different activities in the presence of the faculty, and teacher is there to give corrective actions or corrective measures to the student. My son, in a third grade, 7 year, he is able to use chat gpt for the school assignments. अगर 7 साल के बच्चे को ये पता है कि चैट जीपीटी इज देयर इन द सिस्टम, वी कैन यूज दैट फॉर essay writing. For higher education student, it is not a difficult job. So the way we are giving written assignment to our student, they are copy pasting information and submitting to the faculty. Those kind of tasks, those kind of activities are serving no purpose nowadays. So we need to capture the amount of understanding the students are able to develop when available with the teacher. So why we use active learning? Behind every good teacher is an exhausted class. When you are preparing for a lecture, you are preparing it for yourself. Many of the students demand notes or the reference material to study by their own. So if we involve our student in different activity, chances are there, I'm not saying 100%, but chances are there students will able to understand that information. A very famous Chinese proverb, tell me I forgot, show me I remember, involve me, I will understand. So when the students are performing certain activity, they are more mindful as compared to listening to those information only. Give a man a fish, you have fed him for today. Teach a man to fish, you have fed him for lifetime. And in new education policy 2020, they said there is a demand for the development of the student in terms of lifelong learning abilities. अगर आज की डेट में एग्जामिनेशन हॉल में कोई बीटेक या एमटेक का स्टूडेंट कहता है ना कि पेपर इज आउट ऑफ सिलेबस, देयर इज नो टर्म कॉल्ड आउट ऑफ सिलेबस nowadays. आपके पास syllabus is there. It is your responsibility that as per your level, as per the level of the degree, you need to explain that syllabus and collect information from different resources. एमटेक वाले से तो ये बात बिल्कुल ही एडजस्ट नहीं होती कि पेपर इज आउट ऑफ सिलेबस. You need to reframe that syllabus, and as per the demand you need to collect information from the different sources. So we need to develop lifelong learning abilities among our student rather than just focusing on remembering and understanding. Business and industry environment also clearly advocated that in today's education system, there must be a place for teaching students to become team members, to share resources and talents, and to acquire social skills that help them in the workplace. It means at institute level, is specifically for diploma level institution, where 60% weightage as per the curriculum given to the practical skill and just 40% of weightage to the theoretical component. It means in the theory classes also, the teacher need to create an environment where the student work for those information. So most of the activities need to be skill related rather than just focusing on developing information again and again that is already available. अब अगर आपका कोई टीचर क्लास में जाके एक्सप्लेन करता है डिफाइन डिफाइन फोर्स आप अभी गूगल पे डालो, डिफाइन फोर्स, आपको 10 वीडियोस मिल जाएंगी, स्टार्टेड फ्रॉम द प्राइमरी एजुकेशन अप टू द हायर एजुकेशन. So teacher can give this as an assignment to understand the concept of force in whatever language it is possible for you, and the classroom is used for discussion purposes only. So classroom में आप force के related activities कराएंगे rather than writing that definition on the board or writing those formulas. So that information is already available with the student. Give that activity to the student to be ready with that information, and class is used for solving the numerical problem or few of the demonstration activities performed by the teacher, so that student is able to understand the concept of force. जब आप कहते हो write a C program may be available on a computer, may be available on the Google in any XYZ course. So program is available. Give that program to the student, develop his or her basic understanding, and in a laboratory environment of that particular class, ask the student to identify errors given in this particular program and try to solve those errors. So it is the teacher who is going to create that kind of environment. What the children can do today, they are able to do it alone tomorrow. So most of the classes must be focused on team based and group based activity. That is the demand of the working environment. So once the student is out of from your diploma institution, he or she may be recruited by an industry where the teamwork and group work play an important role rather than the individual activities. So experience plus reflection is equal to learning. And what is the most effective method of teaching? The student is teaching other student. Make group of students in your class, and those group of students will help each other to understand the content matter fully. So in nutshell, for this particular generation, Generation Z student, whose concentration span is very low, it is very difficult for the teacher to engage the students in a 45 minutes long lecture. Create an environment where one student is helping another student. The teacher is giving information, and after providing information, allow the students to interact with each other, discuss about that content matter, and come to the conclusion or the assignment that is given by the teacher. सो देर इज टेक्नोलॉजी अवेलेबल, हमारे पास क्विजेज हैं जिसमें हम मल्टीपल चॉइस क्वेश्चंस डाल देते हैं, प्रेजेंटेशन मेथड इज देयर, सेमिनार मेथड इज देयर, केस स्टडी एनालिसिस मेथड इज देयर, बट दिस इज द टीचर हु इज गोइंग टू organize such kind of experiences for the student. So no need to spoon feed information among student. Give them opportunity to go through that information and then help out the student to focus more upon that understanding. अब एक क्वेश्चन आता है कि देर आर मेनी स्टूडेंट हु डू नॉट नो द बेसिक इंफॉर्मेशन. उनको 2+2 4 ही नहीं आता, तो मैं अलजेब्रिक इक्वेशंस पे या मैं डिफरेंट इंजीनियरिंग कॉन्सेप्ट्स पे उनको किस तरह से डेवलप करेंगे. देयर मे बी फ्यू स्टूडेंट्स जिनको नहीं आता, देयर मे बी 1 or 2 स्टूडेंट्स इन योर क्लास हु ऑलरेडी नो दिस इंफॉर्मेशन. So make a group in such a way that there are mediocre students, there are good student, and there are students who know nothing. So there may be extra classes organized at institute level for those students, but practically if they are at the level D, try to develop their level up to C, and then after C, try to develop their level up to B. But do not say that you are not able to do anything for this degree or for this diploma. Make peer groups in a classroom environment. So when we are using different teaching methods or approaches, the 4 skills of communication comes in picture, that is speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And the most important part is reflection. I would say here in primary education or at school level, the teachers are putting more effort for the development of student as compared to higher education. Students in school are performing reflection activities, but in our diploma and engineering institutions, we are just focusing on development of information and delivery of information. So when the students are reflecting upon what they have learned, they come to know the importance of that particular learning. Environmental sciences is a common subject for all the branches. How many teachers, those who are dealing with this particular subject, can explain to the student that why mechanical engineering students are dealing with this particular subject, why it is essential for computer science and engineering student to go through that information, what is the role of a chemical engineer for the protection of an environment, what a textile engineer or an electrical engineer can do for the protection of an environment. We are just focusing on the information given in the curriculum. अगर आप मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग वाले स्टूडेंट को बताओगे कि देयर आर 3 डिफरेंट लॉज ऑफ थर्मोडायनेमिक दैट इज अप्लाइड टू एन इकोसिस्टम, आपका न्यूटन लॉस फर्स्ट सेकंड थर्ड तीनों आपके इकोसिस्टम में अप्लाई होते हैं. द स्टूडेंट इज एबल टू रिलेट द सब्जेक्ट ऑफ थर्मोडायनेमिक विद एनवायरमेंटल साइंसेस. व्हेन यू आस्क योर स्टूडेंट दैट कार्बन फुटप्रिंट इज देयर, कार्बन आपका कहाँ रिलीज हो रहा है, घर पे अगर आपका टीवी ऑफ भी है उस केस में भी 2% कार्बन इज रिलीजिंग ऑल द टाइम विद दैट पर्टिकुलर इंस्ट्रूमेंट एट होम. The student will know the importance of that particular environment. So basic purpose is when we are saying the reflection upon learning, what is the application of that learning, how the student is going to use that learning. Mathematical faculty है हमारे पास इस ग्रुप में, हम स्लोप पढ़ाते हैं, स्लोप का कॉन्सेप्ट कहाँ यूज होता है इन योर डे टू डे लाइफ. So these kind of things need to be known to the student. Application based. टीचर कब रिफ्लेक्ट करा पाएगा स्टूडेंट को, व्हेन द टीचर इज एबल टू रिलेट द कंटेंट मैटर विद देयर डे टू डे एग्जांपल्स. कम्युनिकेशन सब्जेक्ट पढ़ाया जाता है. व्हाट इज द पर्पस ऑफ कम्युनिकेशन? After getting a formal education, after earning diploma or degree, when the student is working in a quality department or in a production department, and say he or she is in the writing job of that manual product जो आप launch कर रहे हो उसका manual लिख रहे हो, if the manual is in a complex language, many of the chances that consumers are not able to understand the instructions fully. जितनी simple language में आपका manual होगा उतनी आपकी product की यूजर फ्रेंडलीनेस इंक्रीज होगी. दैट इज वाई कम्युनिकेशन इज देयर. हम उनको प्रोफेशनल ईमेल्स लिखना सिखाते हैं, प्रेसी राइटिंग, समराइजिंग इंफॉर्मेशन इज देयर. सो दीज आर द एप्लीकेशंस ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर सब्जेक्ट. सो रिफ्लेक्शन कब होगी? व्हेन वी आर एबल टू रिलेट द सब्जेक्ट विद द देयर लर्निंग्स by taking day to day life examples. Assumptions of active learning. Learning by nature is an active endeavor. There is nothing called passive learning. If somebody is listening, somebody is trying to learn something, it means he or she is the active agent of that particular process. And as per the literature also, when the teacher is using lecture method, the retention of material is only up to 5%. ये कितने घंटे बाद है? आफ्टर 48 hours the retention of material is up to 5% only. When you involve somebody in reading activity, the retention of material is 10%. Audio visual aid, जब हम कहते हैं ना what kind of technology integration you are doing, some of the teachers said we show YouTube videos to them, we are using simulation based studies softwares for the student. उसमें एज पर द रिसर्च कितना रिटेंशन बढ़ा रहे हैं हम मटेरियल का? ओनली अप टू 20%. डिमॉन्स्ट्रेशन मेथड 30%, ग्रुप डिस्कशन 50%, practice by doing. When they are doing something by their own, retention is 75%. And when the student is teaching other student or there is immediate use of the teaching, the retention of material is up to 90%. So what we need to do more is involve the students in the process of learning. Motivate, identify few of the students in your class who are very good in terms of conceptual understanding and ask those students to help other students to develop the content matter. So that will help the student to go through the information more. In the effective principles of teaching, they said respect diverse talents. Why we need to add variety to our classroom environment? Different people learn in different ways. So, can you read this particular statement and try to identify the answer without discussion? Yes, from the center also, I request the participants to kindly read the statement available with you on screen and try to select one correct answer out of the 4. Your sister called to say she is having twins. Which of the following is more likely? Assume she is not having identical twins. All are equally likely. Okay. ऊपर लिखा भी हुआ है, it's a misconception question. C is the right answer. One boy and one girl. The topic from it's the topic of mathematics probability. So every people different people learn in a different way. So जिनको visual attract करेगा, they try to identify the answer from the image. जिनको verbal explanation or the written material interaction is more, they will read that they are having twins. उनका focus किस चीज पे करेगा कि उनका there are twins, so twins can be both, they may be equally likely. They do not need to, they do not think of going deep into this particular statement because processing time of information is very less. आपका कोई टॉपिक और चल रहा था, उसमें आपको स्टेटमेंट दे दिया गया टू आइडेंटिफाई आंसर, so you do not have ample time to process this amount of information. Same in the case of the students available with you in a class. When we are exposing them with the new information, there is a very little time available with the student to capture or process that information, and sometimes they are not ready with the answers. हो सकता है आप किसी पेपर में अपेयर हुए हैं, देर आर 50 मल्टीपल चॉइस क्वेश्चंस और आपने कर दिए, बाहर आके जब आप अपनी इन्फॉर्मेशन को एनालाइज करते हो, एंड वी कॉमनली हर्ड दैट मेनी ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स सेड ओहो ये तो मुझे आता था, मैंने गलत कर दिया. वो गलत क्यों कर दिया? बिकॉज द प्रोसेस इंफॉर्मेशन दैट इज required by that particular individual may be more as compared to the time given in that particular paper, क्योंकि उन्होंने डिस्टिंक्ट करना था मेरिट वाइज. The purpose is not to check the level of understanding, it is also to check the level of speed the one is able to show in that amount of information. So आपके पास जितना process time कम होगा, it is difficult for the student to capture right answers. That is why it is being said, learning pyramid क्या कहता है? Teach others or immediate use of teaching help us to process more amount of information. तो ये स्ट्रैटेजीज किसने डिफाइन कर दी है? इट इज द टीचर हु इज गोइंग टू डिफाइन द स्ट्रैटेजीज दैट हाउ आई एम गोइंग टू इन्वॉल्व माय स्टूडेंट्स इन द प्रोसेस ऑफ लर्निंग. जैसे मैं कह दूं कि आप कल से जाके यूपी में फॉर एवरी सब्जेक्ट यू आर गोइंग टू यूज नंबर्ड हेड टुगेदर टेक्निक, और यू आर गोइंग टू यूज थिंक पेयर शेयर मेथड, या सारे टीचर डिमॉन्स्ट्रेशन मेथड को यूज करेंगे फॉर टीचिंग. दैट मे नॉट बी ट्रू फॉर द एवरी सब्जेक्ट और फॉर एवरी क्लास. मैथमेटिकल फैकल्टी को क्या चाहिए? ब्लैक बोर्ड. स्टेप बाय स्टेप फॉर्मेशन होगी इंफॉर्मेशन की. ओनली देन योर स्टूडेंट नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दैट व्हाट वी नीड टू डू. कम्युनिकेशन के टीचर को क्या चाहिए? मोर ऑफ एक्टिविटीज इन अ क्लास. द स्टूडेंट विल परफॉर्म एक्टिविटीज अगेन एंड अगेन टू हैव परफेक्शन. कम्युनिकेशन एक दिन में तो डेवलप नहीं होगी. वी नीड एटलीस्ट 30 minutes of reading, 30 minutes of writing, 30 minutes of speaking and 45 minutes of listening to become an effective communicator in a given language. एक दिन में आप अपनी या एक सेमेस्टर में आप कम्युनिकेशन को डेवलप नहीं कर पाओगे. So you need continuous practice. So उस सब्जेक्ट की रिक्वायरमेंट क्या है? The class is full of activities. फिजिक्स की फैकल्टी को क्या चाहिए? The logical thinking need to be developed among student. सिर्फ रिमेंबरिंग से काम नहीं चलेगा, आपको स्टूडेंट की लॉजिक एबिलिटी को एनहांस करना पड़ेगा. वो कब होगा? व्हेन द क्लासेस आर फुल ऑफ प्रैक्टिस बेस्ड सेशंस. आप थियरी पढ़ा रहे हो, उसके साथ केस स्टडी दो, उसके साथ न्यूमेरिकल स्टेटमेंट को अटैच करो एंड आस्क द स्टूडेंट टू सॉल्व प्रॉब्लम इन द प्रेजेंस ऑफ द फैकल्टी. ओनली देन द स्टूडेंट्स हैव अ कमांड ऑन दैट पर्टिकुलर सब्जेक्ट. टेक्निकल सब्जेक्ट्स पे कमांड कब आएगी? व्हेन द स्टूडेंट गो टू दैट लेबोरेटरी एनवायरनमेंट, interact with material and resources, come to know what kind of errors can be produced by working on that XYZ machinery, then only the student is able to understand the working principle. So nobody stops us to take our theory classes in a practical classrooms. When the machine is in a working condition, the teacher is explaining the working principle, the students are able to more relate to that information rather than making labeling diagram or developing the repeated content again and again. So the purpose is development of higher order thinking skills among students. So when we are saying higher order thinking skills among students, there are very few students in your class who are able to develop up to the level of synthesis and evaluation. It is totally dependent upon what kind of ability available with the student. But yes, it is possible for the teacher to develop up to the level of एनालिसिस तक हर स्टूडेंट को हम डेवलप कर पाए. So when we are using these kind of active learning strategies in a classroom environment, the three different categories we can think of. One is individual active learning techniques. These techniques can easily be incorporated in your traditional lectures. Say your style of teaching or your comfort of teaching is a lecture method only. So you go by the lecture method, but these are the few strategies you can incorporate to make those lectures more interesting and more engaging. So when you develop a content in a class, ask your class student to identify few of the examples related to that particular content. Say I am dealing with the subject of environmental sciences for mechanical engineering student, and the topic today that I am going to teach is food chain or food web. फूड चेन फूड वेब का कॉन्सेप्ट फिफ्थ क्लास के स्टूडेंट को आता है एट स्कूल लेवल. अगर मैं वो जाके वहां पे प्राइमरी कंज्यूमर, सेकेंडरी कंज्यूमर, टर्शरी कंज्यूमर बनाने लग जाऊं, is my mechanical engineering students are going to engage with me in that particular class? अगर मैं वहां जाके सन बनाने लग जाती हूँ बोर्ड पे, देन प्राइमरी, सेकेंडरी, टर्शरी कंज्यूमर, कितने स्टूडेंट एंगेज होंगे इन दैट क्लास? नो वन, बिकॉज दे ऑलरेडी नो कि फूड चेन और फूड वेब का कॉन्सेप्ट क्या है. But if I'm starting by the statement that why the flow of unidirectional in an ecosystem, student need to think upon that information. They need to collect their past experiences and then come to the conclusion कि एनर्जी वन वे में क्यों फ्लो कर रही है इन एन इकोसिस्टम. Then they come to the concept of that food chain or food web. So rather than dealing with the content that is already known to the student, develop higher order thinking skill. Ask them to give an example of this particular statement. So they need to think upon that information and then give the conclusion of that particular statement. When I'm dealing with the topic of heat transfer, say for example, I'm a chemical engineer by specialization. So when I'm dealing with the subject of heat transfer, I, in a very first introductory class of that particular subject at diploma level, I can ask my class student that what we mean by the heat transfer in fixed material. So boiling pan can be one example. आप लैपटॉप यूज कर रहे हो, उससे रेडिएशन से जो हीट रिलीज हो रही है, व्हाट काइंड ऑफ हीट इज दिस, कन्वेक्शन का जो हीट ट्रांसफर है वो किस तरह से होता है. So what we are saying, after dealing with the content, I am asking my class student to pick up few examples so that you can relate with that particular information. So we are giving time to the student to think upon that information in a real manner. अगर आपकी न्यूमेरिकल रिलेटेड क्लासेस है, मैथमेटिकल क्लास, कोई आप न्यूमेरिकल सब्जेक्ट, डिजाइन रिलेटेड सब्जेक्ट से डील कर रहे हैं, आस्क द स्टूडेंट टू डेवलप द नेक्स्ट स्टेप. आपने कॉन्सेप्ट करा दिया, नाउ देयर आर वन और टू एग्जांपल्स दैट यू आर गोइंग टू गिव टू योर स्टूडेंट. सो फॉर दोज एग्जांपल आस्क द स्टूडेंट टू गिव information related to the next concept. 1-minute paper during the lecture. When the students are dealing with the content, ask the student to write few points or key highlights of today lecture. So last में 5 मिनट स्टूडेंट सिर्फ ये लिखेगा कि उसकी आज की key learnings क्या थी, and teacher come to know that what level of understanding they are able to develop. The muddiest point at the end of the class, the teacher will ask the student what is the most complex point of today's discussion. तो स्टूडेंट क्या बताएंगे कि हमें ये वाला पार्ट है जो आपका वो समझ नहीं आया. सो दैट हेल्प यू टू डिफाइन इंस्ट्रक्शन इन द नेक्स्ट क्लास. वोटिंग, आपका कंटेंट है somewhat similar to the student. Ask the student that whether we need to go through that information again. Say in a civil engineering there are subjects survey 1, survey 2. सर्वे 2 उसी को समझ आएगा जिसका सर्वे 1 क्लियर है. होते हैं ना रिलेटेड सब्जेक्ट, आपका सर्वे 1 है क्लियर है तो आपको सर्वे 2 के कॉन्सेप्ट समझ आएंगे. So no need to go for the complete syllabus. Ask the student that what additional information you require for this particular subject. 1-page lecture summarization. At the end of the class, 10 to 15 minutes, the student will write about any question that is complex by nature asked by the teacher. List pros and cons, or the student will develop daily or weekly journal. So these are few of the examples that we can incorporate in individual active learning strategies. Second is cooperative active learning strategies. So cooperative active learning strategy means when the group of the student is 3 to 4 only. जब हम अपनी क्लास को ग्रुप्स में डिवाइड करेंगे, in a group there are only 3 to 4 students who are working for a common goal. So those 3 or 4 students will work for the common achievement. So the different strategies are numbered head together, visioning and futuring, jigsaw method, concept mapping, STAD, or think, pair, and share. Cooperative strategies, where we consider that social skills are already developed among students. So cooperative strategies हम कहाँ यूज करते हैं? The students of 7th semester, 8th semester, 5th and 6th semester, जिनके group interaction is already developed. So we consider that these students are able to perform certain activities independently. हम उन्हें माइनर प्रोजेक्ट्स देते हैं, मेजर प्रोजेक्ट देते हैं, सो दे आर परफॉर्मिंग दोज एक्टिविटीज बाय देयर ओन. सो इन कोलैबोरेटिव लर्निंग द ग्रुप साइज में बी मोर. सो उसमें डिफरेंट स्ट्रेटजीज क्या होती हैं? फिश बॉल डिस्कशन, स्टम्प योर पार्टनर, केस स्टडी मेथड, प्रॉब्लम बेस्ड लर्निंग, और if we are using technology it can be blackboard share. So what is the difference between cooperative and collaborative learning strategy? In cooperative strategy, the structured group ideal size is 3 to 4 students, but in collaborative learning, we consider maybe half of the class will work for one project and half of the class will work for another project. Group work towards the common goals such as positive interdependence, individual accountability, heterogeneous grouping. Student receive training in small group. So हम initially उनके group क्यों बना रहे हैं first and second semester में? So that they are able to develop social skills. कि when it comes to work in team or group, what kind of behavior we need to show. In collaborative learning, we consider that social skills are already developed and students are independent enough to show their skills and performance. In cooperative learning strategy, there is a major role of the teacher. So आपके जो first, second, third, fourth semester के student हैं, they need faculty all the time in the classes. The teacher will provide step by step detail to the student that how we are going to perform this kind of activity, and if the students are not doing it right, the teacher is there to give corrective actions to the student. But in collaborative learning, when we assigning project based activities to the student, if the group wishes so, they come to the supervisor and ask for the help. Otherwise, supervisor will do the periodic assessment of their performance. Student in cooperative learning strategies are basically used for a classroom environment only. So every student will submit the activity at the end of the class. But in terms of collaborative learning, the student retain draft to complete the further work. So ये basic difference होता है cooperative and collaborative में. जब हम cooperative learning की बात करेंगे, these are for more less mature student. Collaborative learning is for the more higher kind of student. So at the end of the session, we are going to discuss few of the strategies related to that. First, I will show you the video of demonstration method of teaching. Inauguration में कोई कह रहा था ना, we need to demonstrate the whole activity to the student. So demonstration is a teaching methodology that we can easily incorporate in a lecture method. With the help of demonstration, the teacher can develop experience that are concrete by nature. So that is a lifelong kind of learning experience that we are creating. So this video will help you to understand what we mean by demonstration method.
A pendulum. I have an object that weighs 15 kilograms and I can lift it up 1 meter, which I have done now. That means I've done work. MGH is the work I have done. I've increased the potential energy of this object. 15 times 10 or 150 joules. If I let it fall, then that will be converted to kinetic energy. If I would let it swing from 1 meter height, then you would be there and it would hit you, you'd be dead. 150 joules is enough to kill you. They use these devices, called a wrecker ball, they use them to demolish buildings. You lift up a very heavy object, even heavier than this, and then you let it go, you swing it, thereby converting gravitational potential energy into kinetic energy, and that way you can demolish the building. Just let it hit, and it breaks the building. That's the whole idea of wrecking. So you're using then the conversion of gravitational potential energy to kinetic energy. Now, I am such a strong believer of the conservation of mechanical energy that I am willing to put my life on the line. If I release that ball from a certain height, then that ball can never come back to a point where the height is any larger. If I release it from this height and it swings, then when it reaches here, it could not be higher. There is a conversion from gravitational potential energy to kinetic energy back to gravitational potential energy, and it will come to a stop here. And when it swings back, it should not be able to reach any higher, provided that I do not give this object an initial speed when I stand here. I trust the conservation of mechanical energy for 100%. I may not trust myself. I'm going to release this object, and I hope I will be able to do it at zero speed, so that when it comes back, it may touch my chin, but it may not touch my chin. I want you to be extremely quiet, because this is no joke. If I don't succeed in giving it zero speed, then this will be my last lecture. I will close my eyes. I don't want to see this. So please be very quiet. Almost didn't sleep all night. 3, 2, 1, 0. Physics works, and I'm still alive.
So this is an example of demonstration method of teaching that the teacher can easily incorporate in any lecture method. The second teaching strategy that we are going to discuss in this class is numbered head together. So numbered head together can be a cooperative strategy or it can be collaborative strategy. So why we need numbered head together? It can be cooperative or it can be collaborative strategy depending upon the type of students you have taken. So if the group size is more than 4, it is considered as collaborative. If it is limited to 3 or 4, it is considered as cooperative learning strategy. So it can be easily incorporated in the body of the lecture. So in any lecture for 10 to 15 minutes, we can incorporate in strategy, and it can be used in large lecture classes. So when we are using these kind of strategy, there is infrastructure requirement also. So student, when they need to work in team or work in group, their sitting arrangement need to be flexible enough. So infrastructure need to be kept in focus when we are integrating these kind of technology. So suppose this is your students in a class. So teacher will deliver the content to the whole class. So initially you will develop information in front of your class student, and students review that information that has been learned and participate. So after delivering that information, the teacher is going to form teams of the student. So if the complex matter is complex by nature, and you want to know that whether students are able to understand it or not, we can simply go by numbered head together technique. So 30 to 35 minutes the teacher will deliver information, and after delivering information the teacher will announce the different teams. Suppose I divided my class student into 4 different teams. So सारी क्लास को हमने कितनी टीम्स में डिवाइड कर लिया? 4 teams में. How we are going to define teams? Depending upon the variety of learning levels. So it is not name wise, it is not roll number wise, it is as per the ability of the student. So within a team there is a mix of students available. Few are good, few are average, few students who needs improvement. So we develop team of the students. So there is T1, T2, T3 and T4. So after the formation of the team, the teacher will state a question. So that question need not to be complex, it need not to be simple, it is the choice of the teacher. So whatever statement you want to ask or prepare among the class student, you will state that question and ask the team members to discuss about that information. So if one student know the answer, rest of the 3 do not know the answer, within the team they are able to develop their understanding. So we give time to the students to give about to think about that information, and after that thinking time the teacher asks the questions दैट कैन बी, आपका क्वेश्चन का नेचर कैसा होगा ये बाद में डिस्कस करते हैं. सो व्हेन द क्वेश्चन इज बीइंग आस्क्ड बाय द टीचर, allow think time to the student where team members are interacting with each other. Here the role of the teacher is to observe what kind of interaction is happening in the team. They are not discussing about their personal things, they are discussing about the instructional material. So when the students are discussing about the information, the teacher is constantly observing or listening to their discussions. Once the think time is over, the teacher can call any member from any team. Suppose the teacher said one number from every team, so her team ka jo first candidate hai, he or she need to give the response. So every team first member will give the response. So if any team do not know the answer, the rest of the teams will help that particular team to know about that particular statement. And if all the teams know the answer, the teacher can extend that particular question and make it more detailed or more explanatory. So this is how we can develop for that particular information. So this particular method help the student who actually needs improvement. हमने क्या कर दिया यहाँ पे, we reduce the personality clashes. When the teacher is interacting with the student, there may be personality differences, but when the student is interacting with another student, their level of understanding can be developed easily because they are not hesitant to ask questions to the fellow student. So this particular method help us to develop information that is essential for them to know. So what kind of questions that we can ask with the use of this particular method? The teacher can use closed response questions also or open response questions also. So we can prepare them for the final examinations also, or we can develop their critical thinking also. So define kinematic viscosity. What is meant by fully developed fluid flow? What is delta E for steady state system? So I have taken example from my branch of specialization. You can think of any topic of your branch and define some of the questions under this method. Which is the law on which the concept of material balance is based upon? It can require reasoning or application based question also. Do you expect that the Hagen-Poiseuille equation to give accurate results for corroded pipes? Explain the reason that why flow of energy is unidirectional in an ecosystem. So any kind of questions can be developed with the help of numbered head together. Suppose there are students to whom you consider they are not able to pass the subject. So there are few topics in the syllabus that are very important from examination point of view. For those topics, we can use numbered head method technique in a tutorial classes for the preparation of that content. Tutorial में तो हम पूरे tutorial class को use कर सकते हैं for this particular technique. So this is cooperative method. Another technique that we are going to discuss is discussion method. So there is a myth that group discussion is a teaching strategy. That can be teaching strategy for management student, but when it comes to the coverage of content that is technical by nature, group discussion cannot work. हम group discussion में कोई topic cover करा सकते हैं? That is core technical, not possible. Leadership develop करनी है, communication develop करनी है, team ability develop करनी है, we can go by group discussion kind of approaches. But for a technical kind of discussion, there is a different discussion approach that we may use. One example is fishbowl method of discussion. So fishbowl method can be organized in two different ways. One is closed fishbowl discussion and another is open fishbowl discussion. अब फिशबॉल होता क्या है? सेट अप द टेबल इन द सेंटर ऑफ द क्लास विद फ्यू चेयर्स. सो आपके पास यहाँ पे देर आर टू डिफरेंट अरेंजमेंट, इनर साइकिल एंड आउटर साइकिल. Inner cycle is known as fish and outer cycle is known as bowl. In this particular method, for inner cycle, we need to identify student whose IQ level is high as compared to rest of the class student. Good student होते हैं who are very good in terms of matter preparation. So we need to identify those 4 or 5 student and the remaining student will form an outer cycle. Inner circle cycle student का role क्या रहेगा? The teacher will give one topic for the preparation to inner cycle student along with the notes or reference material. सारी information किसने provide करनी है? Teacher ने. and give those notes or reference material and ask those 4 or 5 students to prepare for this particular topic, and after a week the discussion will be organized in a class. So हमने उनको एक हफ्ते का टाइम दे दिया, एक हफ्ते बाद हम वो डिस्कशन को ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे. In closed fishball method, all the students will occupy the inner circle seats, and discussion will be initiated by the teacher by asking question. टीचर उस टॉपिक के रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन किन से पूछेगा? इनर सर्कल स्टूडेंट से, एंड स्टूडेंट्स विल गिव रिस्पॉन्स टू दो स्टेटमेंट्स. आउटर सर्कल स्टूडेंट विल ईदर नोट डाउन द इंफॉर्मेशन, वो अपने नोट्स प्रिपेयर करेंगे, और इफ दे हैव एनी डाउट दे विल आस्क क्वेश्चन टू द इनर सर्कल स्टूडेंट्स टू, एंड एट द सेम टाइम फ्रॉम द टीचर टू. वो अंदर वाले स्टूडेंट से भी क्वेश्चन पूछ सकते हैं और टीचर से भी क्वेश्चन को पूछ सकते हैं. So when the discussion is going on, outer group student will list down few of the questions and comments during the inner group discussion, and जब discussion teacher declare the discussion is over, outer group student can ask questions and clarify their doubts. ये किन टॉपिक्स के लिए कर सकते हैं? द टॉपिक्स दैट आर सिमिलर बाय नेचर. उनने लास्ट सेमेस्टर में पढ़ रखा है, but for the next subject to understand they need to revise that information again. So rather than focusing on delivering information again by the teacher क्या organize कर देगा? एक discussion for the revision of that information. Another approach may be open discussion. Open discussion में one slot for inner cycle remain vacant. Any student from the outer cycle who think that more information is available with me, he or she can become the part of discussion. Fishbowl method of discussion में किस तरह के questions हो सकते हैं? It can be open-ended discussions. So if there is a statement why there is an energy crisis, what are some of the reasons we do not use more solar energy to reduce our dependence on oil? So this kind of controversial questions: is nuclear energy good or bad for mankind? Consumerism, luxury versus need. So the teacher can organize open discussions also. It can be controversial discussions also. So these kind of statements can be given for fishbowl method of discussion. Advantages क्या होंगी? Rule क्या है? All members of inner circle will participate in that discussion, and it is a responsibility of the teacher to make them part of the discussion. Once the topic or time allocated have been covered, the teacher will summarize the information and open the floor for debriefing. During debriefing, the teacher must review every key point given by the discussion mates, interesting comments, and group feeling regarding the particular issue. Participants must be allowed to develop their own conclusion and express themselves freely. So this is how we can organize discussion. So it will help us to facilitate dialogues between group, exposes the knowledge of each other, and explain the collective understanding of a subject. So these kind of discussion can be organized by the teacher in a class. So you can think of any of the topic for which you can organize these kind of discussion. So in this class we have covered, other than lecture method, we have covered 3 different strategies. Demonstration, that can become the part of lecture method. Numbered head together to improve the students who actually need corrective actions or measures at institute level. And fishbowl method of discussion as a collaborative strategy. So this is all for this particular session.